So this brings us back to the central point of this video and the central point of this video series, and that is this is why they have to wipe out the mother, the human mother, the sacred feminine, the connection to the feminine principle. Because, as most of us all know, that both men and women, as individuals and as group, have a particular kind of stupidity to them. Both men and women collectively and by themselves can do really stupid things. And men's stupidity is doing things like trying to build robots to make yourself immortal, building nuclear bombs that can destroy all life on the planet that you inhabit. That's a certain kind of stupidity that is specific to the male of our species. And we have this sort of sophisticated or unsophisticated checks and balance checks and balances system, a natural checks and balances system, where the women in our species would say, "Hey, you guys, I don't think you should do that. Yeah, you guys got to put your toys away. That's enough of this. You've got taken it a little bit too far." And then you have clear-headed men who listen to these women and say, "Yeah, this is a little crazy," and they sort of wake up to the madness that's going on around them, and they fight off the crazy element, the demonic element that's entered into the male population to make them build these these hell-creating demonic technologies that are going to wipe out the entire biological life on this planet. We have a planet that is a very rare commodity, is a very rare set of conditions, perfect conditions that allow biological life to live here. It's very fragile, like they were saying in their sales pitch. Biological life is very fragile. You need just the right temperature range, a very subtle temperature range. You need to be right the specific distance away from a solar body. You need these other planets to protect you from asteroids and things like that. It's a very hard thing to create. As far as we know, I mean, the scientists might have found other planets with life on them, but there's no planets with life on them anywhere nearby us, at least the kind of life that we understand, biological life. So it's a very rare gift to have the ability to live biological life. It's a very rare opportunity. Spiritually, it's a very rare opportunity. I'm going to get to that in a future film. It's a very rare opportunity for your spiritual being, for your soul to come in and incarnate on a physical planet. It's a very rare gift. But as far as these guys are concerned, they're saying that biological life is tragically flawed, that it can be improved upon through technology. Can you hear the madness here? Like, if you think about this, they're not talking about it extincting one species. They're talking about the extinction of all biological life, that it's unnecessary, that we can improve upon it, and we should get rid of this gift. We should get rid of this rare commodity. And this is where you can understand how much brainwashing, how far gone we all are, how far, just how much destroyed the motherly principle is, the feminine principle is, because nobody's talking about this. Nobody's saying, "Oh my God, this is a nightmare. This is a disaster." No one's saying that life on Earth is flawed for a specific reason. We have troubles to overcome. We have turmoils in our life that help us build character. It helps us get closer to God. There's real reasons for the difficulties on a biological planet. They're not something that you get rid of. In a lot of ways, they're the reason that we incarnate in this situation. But the fact is that nobody's listening to these madmen and saying, "Oh my God, we got to stop this. This has to be stopped. This is crazy." They're talking about wiping out all the life on this planet. So I started to see this pattern. This pattern started to unfold inside my system. I talk about this in some of my other videos. I'm a person with a dyslexic mind. People who have a dyslexic, learning style are people that see patterns. People see the whole picture. They don't see the parts. That's why they have trouble learning in parts. Our educational system teaches people in fragmented parts and then they put the whole picture together. Dyslexic people have to see the whole picture. So I was doing the research for this video series. The whole pattern just unfolded in front of me and I just understood it. I could see it. But I wanted to see if it was correct. You can make mistakes. You're not always going to see things clearly. So I said, well, looking at Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World and looking at where we are now in terms of that blueprint being unfolded in material existence, manifesting itself in material life, they should be right about now making artificial wombs. In The Brave New World, the first chapter of the book, children are brought through the facility where life is produced, where human life is produced. And they've gotten rid of parents. In fact, mother is sort of a swear word. Family is sort of a swear word in the Brave New World. And they go through this facility where these babies are created, and they are created in these artificial wombs, like you saw in the Star Wars movies with the clones, where they're creating the clone population, or the pods that were in the Matrix, this sort of thing. So the fact that they were able to take natural childbirth, take the act of a woman carrying a baby inside her, and take it away from her, and turn it into a machine function, and then raise the children with machine, again, going back to the work of Joseph Chilton Pierce, and this incredibly important bonding period where children develop 90% of their brains and all this stuff they develop in these formative years, and take that away from the mother that teaches the child about love, transmits all of these great inherent character qualities and all of these things that a properly developed person receives, and take that away and give it to the machines. Have the children be raised by machines, have them be programmed to be perfect citizens within this structure. And so where we are right now in our own lives, where we are as a civilization and where Aldous Huxley's blueprint, The Brave New World, is, I figured they must be the next biggest step would to be to take away those formative years and take away that important time in the mother's womb and move it to an artificial womb. And sure enough, here it is. There's just all this information about artificial wombs. It's something that they've obviously had for quite some time. They're able to now produce babies in artificial wombs. Mothers have officially become obsolete. We no longer need mothers. We can produce children without mothers, and fathers for that matter. They can store enough eggs and sperm to last forever. They can basically milk people. They also can clone people because now they have a womb, and so they can clone tissues and they can produce these babies without any people being part of the process. So I just want to read you this one quote from Aldous Huxley. This is an interview he gave at Stanford University. And this just pretty much is another piece where they're giving away the whole game. It seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in the process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy who have always existed and presumably will always exist. Again, he's talking from that place, from being a part of this oligarchy himself. Going back to the quote, exist to get people to love their servitude. This is it seems to me, the ultimate in malevolent revolution, shall we say, and this is a problem which has interested me for many years and about which I wrote 30 years ago a fable, Brave New World, which is an account of society making use of all the devices available and some of the devices which I imagine to be possible, making use of them in order to first of all to standardize the population, to iron out inconvenient human differences, to create, to say, mass produce models of human beings arranged in some sort of scientific caste system. Since then, I have continued to be extremely interested in this problem, and I have noticed with increasing dismay a number of the predictions which were purely fantastic when I made them 30 years ago have come true or seem in process of coming true. So this is where we are with all this. They've now made women and mothers obsolete. They're saying that the human being is soon to be obsolete, altogether to be obsolete. Well, all of us are going to be obsolete. All biological life is going to be obsolete. And this is what they're proposing. This is their vision of our collective future. And because our children are spending 7.5 hours a day on the internet, and people themselves, adults, are completely addicted to the internet, are overwhelmed with the stress of modern day life, and also are completely infused or completely hypnotized by the sensory stimulation of our modern day life. We're basically all laying down and allowing this to happen. And now they're going to breed a group of a generation of human beings that they can own basically by creating these GMO babies, by genetically modifying the future generations, which they'll own patents on these genes and they'll claim that they have ownership of them, and they will make them specific to whatever tasks or whatever purpose that this last generation of human beings will need to have before they're completely obliterated and give way to the rise of these robots, these androids, these cyber minds as they call them. So this is their plan for this for us all. So you can see when this is something they've basically admitted to, then these other things that I'm talking about in this video, these other symptoms, these other parts of this equation, these other pieces of the puzzle are not so far-fetched. All right, as we move forward here, I also have to mention that the military and the military-industrial complex, particularly DARPA, is heavily invested in all of these technologies. They're invested in robots and androids and these robots that are controlled by a human mind, replacing soldiers with these robots, these various robots, drone-like robots that can be used from a remote center. They're also developing various interfaces, mind-robot interfaces, which is part of this avatar style Android. They're heavily invested in that. They're also invested in various types of mind chips, technological chips that can be inserted into a human brain, as well as they're invested in artificial limbs, various types of replacing human body parts with artificial technology. So they're invested heavily in all this. There's also these sex robots that they're building. So two of these very heavily financed industries are developing technology that is going to go hand in hand with these transhumanist movement. All this technology will rise up together. And of course, I should mention that not everybody is on board with this. This isn't everybody's plan. This isn't everybody within the elite system's plan. But as these things move forward, and people with money and power realize that they can live forever, or at least have this illusion that they'll live forever, they're going to go for it. This plan will win over any dissenting voices because people will want what the final product is. People are going to want immortality. They're going to want the illusion of immortality. All right, so the next piece is that, like I said earlier on in the video, they're always working on different levels. They're making technological advancements, and they're also working on mind control. They're also working on subliminal messaging. They're also trying to win over and convince people that what they're doing is good, it's appropriate for them. They'll use fear. They're going to use any sort of technique to win people over. And the reason why they have to do this is that people have an incredible ability to create, to manifest ideas into material life. And the oligarchy, these ruling class, this controlling class, always worries about the masses rising up and putting them down, slaughtering the leadership, killing them, destroying their work. So they're always very aware how violent and crazy the mob can get. And so this is in big part their driving motivation for doing everything that they do, is to retain their own power and position. So they know that people have the ability to manifest things, and they know when they're trying to do something that's going to create a major shift, a major change for the whole human race, they need to win the majority of people over to what they're doing. That's why they execute these false flag attacks, and that's why they work on several levels. They also need people to start experiencing the future now. It's a very odd situation. It's like practicing for the future. It's like training for the future. Like when we try to master something, a skill. If you want to learn to play, say, basketball, you need to do drills. You need to practice dribbling. You need to practice shooting. If you want to be a violinist, there's certain techniques you have to do. Playing the piano, there's certain things that you have to do, not just playing the piano, but practicing other little mundane finger movements so that you gain dexterity, reading music, these sorts of things. So they need everyone to start getting on board and doing this. So this is one of the reasons that everybody is playing video games. Not only is it helping them to create the technology to build these super virtual reality worlds, these virtual reality universes that they're going to inhabit in these mega cyber minds, in these giant computers, and these sophisticated computers that they're going to build in the future when they upload their personalities to it. But also, they want people to start getting used to living that way. And again, what's going to happen in these worlds is you're not going to have a sex or a gender when your mind is uploaded to a computer. Robots aren't going to have a sex and a gender. So they're starting to train people, getting people familiar with this idea, this androgynous life. That's why all of this information I'm presenting in this video ties into that. They're starting for people to get used to the idea of eliminating two sexes. So that's why they're feminizing the male principle, and they're more or less getting rid of the female principle. Because when they upload these minds to these mega computers, they're not going to upload the heart. And as I went through before, there's scientific data out there now, as well as years and years of cultural history and religious history that talked about having the soul in the heart and the heart having a separate intelligence, a spiritual intelligence. The heart intelligence is not going to be uploaded to these mega computers, these virtual minds. And so it's not that part of the human experience is going to end, and the soul is going to end with that. So all the human souls that inhabit this earth, all the soul energy is going to disappear from this planet, and that's going to have a tragic effect that most of us do not even realize. I want to say also that I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that they will be able to end up getting away with this because it violates too many natural rules. Immortal life is just something that you can't attain, at least in the physical realm of existence. We all have, in a sense, immortal life in a spiritual being, an etheric being that exists in other realms of consciousness and other planes of existence in other dimensions. So we already have this eternal life, and we also have very powerful and well-developed beings that monitor this planet. There's spiritual energy, and there's rules that just can't be violated. And what they're trying to do with this 2045 initiative just can't be done. I believe that probably what we'll see is a major collapse that happens before this initiative can even really get off the ground, and that'll pretty much break that up from happening. But we'll all have to see how this takes place. But going back to the damage that's being done even right now, and we're talking about this movement to get rid of the two sexes, to make the human species androgynous and bring it down to a unisex type species, that's where we bring in this stuff that's going on with Barack Obama, with Michelle Obama, and all these celebrities. All this stuff I've documented in other videos. So this is where all of this stuff ties in. This is the sort of social aspect of this work. This is where they're working on our consciousness, our subconsciousness. They're trying to get us to agree to all these things, all of these far-reaching ideas that they have. And one of the ways that they do that is make it socially acceptable. And so they start subliminally giving us messages, and then you have this stuff where the first couple is perhaps a gay couple, or the first lady is a transgender person, and Barack Obama is a homosexual man or a bisexual man. And then you have these sort of things that are playing out secretly, and then you have all these celebrities, these women celebrities with male characteristics, and all these male celebrities who are dressed in drag. So that brings us to Barack Obama referring to his wife Michelle as Michael. So I'm going to show you that video clip, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Distinguished guests, and men and women of the finest military in the world. And most of all, Admiral Mullen, Deborah. Michael and I also want to acknowledge your son Jack, who's deployed today. All of you have performed extraordinary service to our country.
All right, just a couple things about what happened there. In President Obama's defense, he's about my age. He's about 50 years old. If you comb through my videos, you'll find there's often times that I'll use the wrong word. This happens as you get older. You start using the wrong names of things. You might call your children the wrong name, things of that sort. And President Obama gives a lot of public speeches. He's a public figure. He's going to make a mistake once in a while. Something like this is bound to happen. So that's totally understandable. Also, the man that President Obama is honoring is named Michael Mullen, Admiral Michael Mullen. So that's where the word Michael came into his consciousness. So again, that's understandable that he would use the word Michael mistakenly because Michael was in his mind. He's talking about Admiral Mullen, and the man's name is Michael, so that's understandable. The part that's really hard to understand, though, is that he used a different gender for his wife's name. I understand using the wrong name. Like, for example, my mother used to call me Peter. My name's Paul, but my mother would call me Peter because I had an older brother named Peter. But she didn't call me one of my 3 sisters' names ever. Do you see this? Sometimes you can make a mistake with the name, but you usually don't make a mistake with the gender for whatever reason. And forgetting your wife's name is pretty much a criminal offense in most marriages. So this is kind of a huge mistake. Calling his wife the wrong name is a huge mistake. But then on top of that, calling her the wrong gender, it just doesn't make much sense that he would call her the wrong name and the wrong gender. Plus his reaction afterwards. He pauses. He seems almost a little bit rattled. He knows he's made some kind of mistake. He doesn't know whether he should backtrack and say, no, I really meant my wife Michelle and not Michael. Should I point this out? Should I just let it go? You can see he's sort of trying to make a decision how he's going to handle this mistake he's just made. Here, I'm going to play the clip again. You can see for yourselves.
Guests, and men and women of the finest military in the world. And most of all, Admiral Mullen, Deborah. Michael and I also want to acknowledge your son Jack, who's deployed today. All of you have performed extraordinary service to our country.
Okay, that's President Obama calling his wife Michelle Michael, and I have a little bit more information where he seems to be in lots of ways providing fuel for the fire of these gay rumors that have surrounded him throughout his presidency, and I guess before that when he was a senator. He does things, he acts in such a way that actually generates a lot of these narratives. And I want to get to that in just a moment. I want to be very clear here, because there's a variety of comments in some of the other videos that are accusing me of either being a racist or being homophobic or being transphobic. And I want to make things perfectly clear. If you watch any of my videos, you will see that I don't have any videos that are about negatively talking about black people or gay people or transgender people. And I'm not doing that in this video either. And I am not in any way believing that black people and people of color and homosexual people and transgender people are in any way going to destroy our planet. They are not working as a group or as individual groups to wipe out biological life on this planet. And I just presented information about at least one group that we can see that appears to be doing this, and that's the transhumanist movement. And we talk about this with the eugenicists. And by and large, people of color, the black people and the nations of color in this world, and the homosexual population, the transgender population, which is a very small segment of the population, don't have a lot of power. They don't have the kind of power that would be necessary to affect the world in some sort of devastating way. What I'm saying in these videos, and I want to make this perfectly clear, and it's a very important point, is that I see that these people, or these particular people for now, are being used as a weapon. They are being used as a tool. They are being used as a weapon against humanity by and large, and specifically against mothers and the institution of motherhood, and they're being used to politically, in a politically correct way, blur the gender lines. And these people have been oppressed. Gay people, and African American people and people of color have been oppressed, and I talk about this quite often in my videos. If you look at the history of the world, you see by and large that white people are usually invading and oppressing people of colors, taking their land, like what happened in America with the Native Americans, enslaving black people in Africa and bringing them to America and Europe as slaves. And you see the European Empire, the English Empire, the British Empire invading countries like India, invading these countries all around the world. And it's usually white people oppressing people of color, not the other way around. But what we see now is that the bullies in this case, the abusers, the elite that whose ancestors ordered this oppression and ordered these invasions of these people all around the world, are now using these people's victimization to further their own personal agenda. I've talked about this in other videos about the abuse cycle, about the trauma cycle, and how predators used a victim stance and victim consciousness to give themselves permission to do wrong acts and abuse other people. And in this case, they're using somebody else's victimization. Because if you criticize or speak the truth, because it's not really being critical, it's speaking the truth about what's going on, immediately people will say, well, you're homophobic, or you're racist, or you're whatever. People are programmed to do this. They're just regurgitating what they're told on a social level by whatever they're watching on TV and this sort of politically correct agenda that's going on out there in the world. But they're basically saying that if you name what's going on here, then you must be a racist or you must be homophobic. This is exactly what they did when they rolled out feminism. Now, I believe that women have been probably the most oppressed group in the history of the planet. Women have often got a bad deal. They've often been the playthings of men. They've often been abused. They still are abused, and they still are oppressed. As I pointed out before, the CIA and other nefarious organizations used the abuse that women have suffered for centuries to roll out this feminist movement, and there's been probably some things that have come out of the feminist movement that has actually helped women. For the most part, though, it's been a disaster for women because it's given women equal rights to work in the world of men, to become men, to act like men, and I'm going to get to this more later on in the video. But it's been a total disaster, and again, destroying the sacred feminine. It's destroying the feminine aspect that it exists not only in women, but also exists in men. And that's why we see the world becoming more violent, the world becoming more aggressive. And that's why I said earlier we're losing our sense of checks and balances. The natural order has been unbalanced. It's been destabilized. So going back to President Obama and the first couple, it's important to know that the first couple are archetypes. They are iconic figures in the psyches and the minds of the American people and the people of the world. George Washington was known as the father of our country. And all presidents occupy that position of the father figure, the male figure, the predominant male figure in the country. And the First Lady occupies that position of the First Lady, the First Mother, the female principle of the American people, and also a very powerful psychological figure within the world. So you can see the effects it would have psychologically on all the people in the world, particularly the people in America, if the president came out as being secretly gay, or it was revealed that the president was gay, or that his wife was a transsexual person. And you could see how this information when it comes out, because I'm pretty sure it is going to come out. I think they're intending for it to come out at some point or another. It's important to make a distinction about this. This isn't a gay couple that ran as a gay couple and they were accepted as a gay couple and became president and first man as a gay couple, because that would be something that people would do by choice. But doing something by deception, as well as all these other things I'm going to point out that are being done to blur the gender lines, to get rid of the motherly principle, and I talked about this quite extensively in the other videos as well. You can see all the evidence for this overwhelming, sweeping propaganda, and the president and the first lady are leading the way. There have been a lot of rumors about the president's sexual orientation. There's a lot of evidence, and there was the Joan Rivers event that happened this summer. And then this past Christmas, President Obama is posing with a tiara in his head with a bunch of Girl Scouts. Now, this is after Joan Rivers. This is after all this stuff. Something also happened with his body man, Reggie Love, which I'll get to in just a few minutes. And President Obama apparently has this rule. He says no president should put anything on his head. So he talks about this as being a rule, and yet here he is wearing a tiara after all of these rumors. You know, he has a media team. He's a brand. So again, I question why would they do something like this when all these rumors are swirling about. I just discovered this about a half an hour ago, and that there is this narrative that Michelle Obama is actually Michael LaVaughn Robinson. There's a Facebook page, and there is a lot of these articles in these sort of right-wing fringe type organizations. But the important thing about this is that the Obama administration and Obama's handlers know about this, and they seem to be feeding these narratives just like they did about Obama's birth certificate. And there are lots of other instances. There's behaviors that Obama has exhibited. There's ways that he's handled things. There's ways that his press team and his media team has handled things to actually encourage these narratives. You can see it more and more. It doesn't take a lot of research to find these instances. They're all over the place. So there is this narrative, and Obama keeps on feeding it. There's also the fact that he had this body man, his sort of person that took care of him, named Reggie Love. His name, Reggie Love, even sounds like some sort of gay porn star. I don't remember ever hearing of any of the other presidents' body men or their personal assistants, but they actually had Reggie Love take a sort of front and center position in the 2008 campaign, and he's been very present as a media figure in a lot of the president's events. And so, of course, there were going to be some rumors about him and the president, given already this narrative that exists. Apparently, Mr. Love had to resign from his position after some, I guess, homoerotic photos surfaced right before the 2012 election, and he wrote a book about it. And there's just a lot of this stuff. There's just a lot of these kind of rumors. There's a lot of these kind of innuendos, and the president's team has fed this. That's enough about the president's piece in this propaganda movement. Now I'm going to move on to the celebrities and how they're being used. All right, to close this video out and talk about how Hollywood, how celebrities are being used as a propaganda tool, I want to start off by saying I've known for quite some time about the transhumanist movement. I know that they're trying to get rid of mothers and motherhood and that kind of principle, to make women more masculine and men more feminine and blur the gender lines. I've known about them trying to addict young people to being in a cyber world by getting them to spend hours and hours online. And then I came across this video, The Irrefutable Proof that Michelle Obama is a man, and I thought it was a joke at first. I talk about in other videos. I didn't think it was something that could possibly pull off. But I did a little bit of research, and I made some discoveries of my own. I made some discoveries that all these A-list actors had to set this rite of passage of having to wear a dress. And I've just made another discovery that the filmmakers that made this original movie actually made a mistake. They overlooked something that's actually a much bigger story than just Michelle Obama. Even in their movie, they used Angelina Jolie as having a normal style hand, and they show a picture that indicates her index finger is bigger than her ring finger. And I took that for granted. I just believe that they did proper research. But I went back recently and looked at it myself and found there's a variety of pictures that show that Angelina Jolie's hand, and you can see it's laying flat here, is actually her ring finger is substantially bigger than her index finger. What I believe happened is the filmmakers, when they were making the movie, in their desire to basically prove that Michelle Obama was a man, they overlooked this really important fact that most of the women in Hollywood also have a ring finger that's much bigger than their index finger. That this is something that's almost 100% across the board. That these celebrities in Hollywood, for the most part, these female celebrities, have this male characteristic, which indicates that there were high levels of testosterone present in utero when these babies were being born, even if they were female. And then I made this movie that there's over a 95% chance that Michelle Obama and Jennifer Aniston were born men. And I've gotten some comments where women say that their ring finger is slightly bigger than their index finger. In some cases, that their ring finger is quite significantly bigger than their index finger. And that basically disproves that this science is not accurate and these observations aren't accurate. And I want to explain this more simply, and I have a better understanding now, and I actually explain this again in the follow-up video entitled A-list actors are being forced to wear dresses. The way this works is that people have known for a very long time that in most cases men's ring fingers are bigger than their index fingers and women's index fingers are bigger than their ring fingers. That's in most cases. People basically knew this just based on observation, and then some doctors did some scientific studies on this. They took pregnant mice and gave their fetuses extra levels of testosterone in some cases and estrogen in others, and they found that the extra levels of testosterone increased growth in the fourth digit, the ring finger, and extra levels of estrogen increased growth in the second digit or the index finger. There are some women whose index fingers and ring fingers are of equal length, or their ring fingers are slightly bigger, and there's a very rare percentage of women, less than 5%, that their ring finger is much longer than their index finger. But there are women who have this condition, and if you are one of these women, you're obviously in this small percentage of women whose ring finger is larger than their index finger. This is most likely due, I think probably assuredly due, to the fact that there was some levels of testosterone either through your mother's diet or through stress, maybe being in an abusive situation or abusive environment, or your mother was under stress, and it kicked in higher levels of testosterone while you were in utero. But this is a very rare occurrence where a woman's ring finger is bigger than their index finger. What the filmmakers of Irrefutable Proof overlooked, which is really a much larger discovery than that Michelle Obama is actually a man, and that is that almost all of these celebrities, all of these female celebrities in Hollywood, maybe 80 or 90% of them, belong to this small 5% group of women whose index fingers are smaller than their ring fingers. And I want to just break this down and say why this is such a huge discovery. Going back to the money, going back to how things get funded. It costs millions and millions of dollars to fund a Hollywood film, or to fund a TV show, or to back a female singer. And they are very selective. The money that runs these programs, that runs Hollywood, is very selective of the celebrities, of the individuals who get chosen to be these big time celebrities. So they are handpicking women with this condition. So this could mean a lot of things. But to add to that, these women often have secondary characteristics that are very masculine, where they could either be men or just very masculine women. And they also have a certain type of personality that you would associate with male traits. So I know a lot of people watch these videos and say, well, they really want to see Michelle Obama get hers and they want to see her taken down. And then other people watch these videos and they say, well, this must be racist. The only reason these videos are being made is because Michelle Obama is black. But if you look at Sarah Palin and you look at Michelle Obama, and a lot of people say, wow, they're so different. They're completely different people. They have a different brand. They've been marketed differently, but they're really the same dude. They're that guy. Even if they're women, they're that guy. Sarah Palin also has the very large ring finger that's much bigger than her index finger. She also shows many second degree masculine characteristics. So even if she's a woman, she also has a lot of testosterone that was present while she was in utero. She also shows a certain nastiness. The Republican women try to emulate, or these idea of right-wing women who embrace the old characteristics, the nurturing characteristics of the old motherhood, the feminine characteristics, and Sarah Palin really doesn't demonstrate those. She's very vengeful, she's very sort of bitter and petty, and she's also sort of a pro-war woman. You know, let's go shoot them up, let's go bomb them. A very aggressive, very hostile types person. Again, showing all these feminist type qualities, all these masculine type qualities she's emulating. I want to go back to a picture of Lady Gaga that I showed. If you can see, there's actually a bend in her ring finger, and I gave this as an example because I believed that her index finger was actually bigger than her ring finger. Somebody commented in one of the videos and told me actually you made a mistake. Go back and look at a few more of her pictures, and sure enough, Lady Gaga has a ring finger that's substantially bigger than her index finger in many other pictures. She's obviously of this same mold. The same people that select Michelle Obama, that has selected Barack Obama, that selected Beyonce, that selected Sarah Palin, they have the same money behind them. All of these people have the same backing behind them. And these women have very masculine characteristics. They have broad shoulders, they have masculine tendencies, they often act like men, they do a lot of things that are masculine in nature, and they are used in a way to degrade the feminine principle, to emulate a certain role model that young women will want to emulate and men will be attracted to, and then what they're doing is moving men and women closer to an androgynous type species where there's only one sex, that men and women are extraordinarily similar in all of these ways. So again, this is something to realize. These people have been selected. They didn't make it because they had talent or because of any other reason. They're choosing women of a certain type of physique. They're choosing women with masculine features. I think this might even go back farther than them, that they're chosen before birth or they've been manipulated. I'm going to get to that later on in the video. So there's another comment from another viewer saying, why don't you check out Evangeline Lilly? She felt that she might be actually a man. She's just the former star of Lost who stars in the Hobbit movies. There are some pictures that very much look like she's in drag. She also looks like a woman in a variety of other pictures, but she has all these masculine characteristics. She has the very broad shoulders, she has the man body, she has the extended ring finger, she has all of these same characteristics. These are the types of women that you see them choosing over and over again. They're not choosing the old sort of voluptuous, curvaceous women, the more feminine women. They're choosing women who have more masculine boy bodies, bodies that most women can't attain. When a woman puts on weight in Hollywood, they stop casting her in lead roles. And also these women are very much being, you can see this with Evangeline Lilly, they're very aggressive. They have a lot of warlike characteristics, a lot of warlike tendencies. You can see this movement developing on a lot of different levels. You see this sort of militarization of women. You can see this with Beyonce's video, If I Were a Boy. It's right there in the title. She's a police officer in the original video and she's brandishing firearms. And then in her Grammy performance, she comes in with a bunch of dancers dressed up like martial law type police troops. And she comes marching in this sort of masculine fashion, and then she grabs her crotch in the beginning of the video. Just sort of sums up this masculization of women. You see this over and over, this theme of turning women into troops, turning them into soldiers, turning them into warriors. You see this theme playing out in movie after movie. It's a very hostile theme to the feminine principle, to the sacred feminine, to the divine mother, to mothers in general, and really to all of us, because there's been this overwhelming movement to glorify the killer instinct, to glorify these principles of being selfish, of being hard, being cold-hearted, to being a killer, to dominate others, to be heartless, to be without a conscience, to just basically be a sociopath. This is something that they have been putting out there, that's going on in the propaganda machine for many, many years. And now women are becoming a big part of this. You're taking something where women, again, have these nurturing characteristics, these nurturing qualities. They're supposed to be loving. They're supposed to bring in this, infuse these positive aspects of community, of connection to nature, connection to the divine principle, connection to God. And then instead they're these dark figures who are becoming very much like men. There was a huge campaign about women have a right to go to war. They have a right to kill people. They have a right to be soldiers. We know what happens when soldiers go over to fight these wars for these demonic leaders who don't care anything about the soldiers, the way they glorify the military here in America, and they're trying to do that all over the world. You're just fighting wars for a very hostile group, and all these soldiers come back with PTSD. Something happens when you kill other people. Something bad happens to you if you become a murderer, if you become a killer. These are not things that are good for anybody. And they keep on glorifying this, and women are fighting for the right to be in the front lines. You have this situation in Israel where it's mandatory for every young person to go through the military, where they're brainwashed, where they're put in this sort of aggressive position, and then women become destructive. They use destructive energy, and it's hard for them to become nurturing mothers then, to open up and embrace the feminine characteristics and feminine qualities. You see even this with women's body types, these six-packs. Women trying to have hard bodies become hard. Again, they have to open up. You have to become round. You have to become soft. It's this flexible characteristic. It's learning to bend, but they're becoming hard. They're becoming like men. Young women are growing up thinking that that is the way that you should be, and young men are being sexualized to these women with male bodies. Alright, this is the last of the 4 videos in this video series. I did a lot of research and I pulled a lot of screenshots of women with elongated ring fingers and men dressing up in drag. I'm going to post all of those pictures as I close out this video, and it's just, the evidence is overwhelming. You see picture after picture of A-list celebrities and famous people that dressed up as men, and women with these sort of masculine characteristics. It's just flooded. We're being bombarded by these principles. You can say whatever you want about these are actually women who just happen to have larger ring fingers, but this is 5% of the population. These kind of women are 5% of the population, and they're making up anywhere from 80 or 90% of the famous women, the famous celebrities that are out there every day, and they often have male type bodies as well, and they have masculine and male type characteristics. This is not an accident. All of these things I've presented in this video are backed by money. There's money behind everything I presented in this video. There's nothing here. These people, these celebrities, any of these experiments that they are doing are well funded. You can't deny that they are trying to make women more masculine and men more feminine. You can see this. Do the research yourself. You can look online, any of these types of things, not just for pictures. When you're watching movies, notice how they're doing this. Notice how they're rolling out this propaganda. You can see the same repetitive patterns, the same repetitive cycles, all across the way they cover media, the politicians, and the movies, and the music videos. It's not about being gay friendly. It's not a racial thing. They are changing the way that human beings think about gender. They are changing the way that human beings think about themselves, and they think about raising babies. They think about having children. They think about having a family unit. Everything is being destroyed. They're spending 7.5 hours on the internet, children are, and it only takes one generation to change everything. Things become normal for a generation. It's become normal for all of our children, for all the children growing up in this era, to be on the internet for large periods of time and spend most of their time in an alternative universe, in a cyber world. And in this alternative universe, there is no men, there is no women, there's just these avatar-like figures, and they are setting everything up for a futuristic world that takes place in alternative realities. It takes place in an alternative universe, and everybody is being groomed and everybody is being conditioned for this. You can say this is far-fetched, but we live in a mad world. When they built atomic bombs, when they built nuclear bombs that were capable of destroying the whole world, that were capable of wiping out all the life on our planet, that became a mad world. You have mad people at the top of the system. You have mad people at the bottom of the system. You have these crazy rituals that they do. You have all these bizarre behaviors and bizarre belief systems that these people have, and most of all, they have a complete disconnection to the God within them. They have a disconnection to the world around them, to the planet Earth that they are dependent on. And when you move the feminine principle, when the feminine principle becomes destructive, and you have this destructive energy, when women become men, when women act more and more like men, and they begin to see the world as men see the world, they become more and more aggressive, they become more and more hostile, they lose the ability to love, they lose the ability to sacrifice for future generations, they lose the ability to give from themselves, the way a mother provides and nourishes a life. The life is literally, the baby, the mother's children, is literally sucking life force off of the women. She's giving the child her blood, she's giving her child her life energy, her creative force, her love force. She's pouring her life into her children, in many cases pouring her life into her husband. It's a great sacrificial type image. It's a great sacrificial type life. It's a representation of God, a godly principle in a way. The idea of a candle that burns itself to provide light and heat for other people. Something that sacrifices itself so other people can live. We see this over and over with nature. We see this over and over with the planet Earth, with Mother Earth. And then you have this situation where the feminine principle is going in the opposite direction. It's become more and more aggressive, it's becoming more and more hostile, and you see men are getting worse. The consciousness of women isn't there anymore to pull men back from this destructive edge, and they're going full blast into a destructive element. They're becoming more and more destructive themselves. They're becoming more and more hostile themselves because there's no loving principle. There's no one to teach them how to love. There's no one there to teach them how to be compassionate and have all of these soft qualities. Our species loses the ability to be nurturing, loses the ability to love. I can say this over and over again. We see this. We are hemorrhaging these higher level qualities, these higher level feelings. We're hemorrhaging a connection to our hearts and to the God within us. We are hemorrhaging all of these things. With each succeeding generation, we are losing more and more. And then you get into a situation where the destructive force, where our collective destructive consciousness penetrates into the earthly principle, into the idea of Gaia, into the idea of the earth itself. And the earth itself just turns destructive. And then we all see what a nightmare that can be. We are all going to be witness to this, and our children and grandchildren are certainly going to be witness to this. When the earth turns destructive, it's no longer nurturing, it's no longer giving, but it becomes a hostile, barren place whose sole purpose seems to be to destroy every living thing that resides on it. Off here it is. There's just all this information about artificial wombs. It's something that they've obviously had for quite some time. They're able to now produce babies in artificial wombs. Mothers have officially become obsolete. We no longer need mothers. We can produce children without mothers, and fathers for that matter. They can store enough eggs and sperm to last forever. They can basically milk people. They also can clone people because now they have a womb, and so they can clone tissues and they can produce these babies without any people being part of the process. So I just want to read you this one quote from Aldous Huxley. This is an interview he gave at Stanford University. And this just pretty much is another piece where they're giving away the whole game. It seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in the process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably will always exist. Again, he's talking from that place, from being a part of this oligarchy himself. Going back to the quote, exist to get people to love their servitude. This is it seems to me, the ultimate in malevolent revolution, shall we say, and this is a problem which has interested me for many years and about which I wrote 30 years ago a fable, Brave New World, which is an account of society making use of all the devices available and some of the devices which I imagine to be possible, making use of them in order to first material life. They should be right about now making artificial wombs. In the Brave New World, the first chapter of the book, children are brought through the facility where life is produced, where human life is produced. And they've gotten rid of parents. In fact, mother is sort of a swear word. Family is sort of a swear word in the Brave New World. And they go through this facility where these babies are created, and they are created in these artificial wombs, like you saw in the Star Wars movies with the clones, where they're creating the clone population, or the pods that were in the Matrix, this sort of thing. So the fact that they were able to take natural childbirth, take the act of a woman carrying a baby inside her, and take it away from her, and turn it into a machine function, and then raise the children with machine, again going back to the work of Joseph Chilton Pierce, and this incredibly important bonding period where children develop 90% of their brains and all this stuff they develop in these formative years, and take that away from the mother that teaches the child about love, transmits all of these great inherent character qualities and all of these things that a properly developed person receives, and take that away and give it to the machines. Have the children be raised by machines, have them be programmed to be perfect citizens within this structure. And so where we are right now in our own lives, where we are as a civilization, and where Aldous Huxley's blueprint, The Brave New World, is, I figured they must be the next biggest step would to be to take away those formative years and take away that important time in the mother's womb and move it to an artificial womb. And sure enough, is a very rare commodity, is a very rare set of conditions, perfect conditions that allow biological life to live here. It's very fragile, like they were saying in their sales pitch. Biological life is very fragile. You need just the right temperature range, a very subtle temperature range. You need to be right the specific distance away from a solar body. You need these other planets to protect you from asteroids and things like that. It's a very hard thing to create. As far as we know, I mean, the scientists might have found other planets with life on them, but there's no planets with life on them anywhere nearby us, at least the kind of life that we understand, biological life. So it's a very rare gift to have the ability to live biological life. It's a very rare opportunity. Spiritually, it's a very rare opportunity. I'm going to get to that in a future film. It's a very rare opportunity for your spiritual being, for your soul to come in and incarnate on a physical planet. It's a very rare gift. But as far as these guys are concerned, they're saying that biological life is tragically flawed, that it can be improved upon through technology. Can you hear the madness here? Like, if you think about this, they're not talking about it extincting one species. They're talking about the extinction of all biological life, that it's unnecessary, that we can improve upon it, and we should get rid of this gift. We should get rid of this rare commodity. And this is where you can understand how much brainwashing, how far gone we all are, how far, how much destroyed the motherly principle is, the feminine principle is, because nobody's talking about this. Nobody's saying, oh my God, this is a nightmare, this is a disaster. No one's saying that life on Earth is flawed for a specific reason. We have troubles to overcome. We have turmoils in our life that help us build character. It helps us get closer to God. There's real reasons for the difficulties on a biological planet. They're not something that you get rid of. In a lot of ways, they're the reason that we incarnate in this situation. But the fact is that nobody's listening to these madmen and saying, oh my God, we got to stop this. This has to be stopped. This is crazy. They're talking about wiping out all the life on this planet. So I started to see this pattern. This pattern started to unfold inside my system. You know, I talk about this in some of my other videos. I'm a person with a dyslexic mind. People who have a dyslexic, learning style are people that see patterns. People see the whole picture. They don't see the parts. That's why they have trouble learning in parts. Our educational system teaches people in fragmented parts and then they put the whole picture together. Dyslexic people have to see the whole picture. So I was doing the research for this video series. The whole pattern just unfolded in front of me and I just understood it. I could see it. But I wanted to see if it was correct. You can make mistakes. You're not always going to see things clearly. So I said, well, looking at Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World and looking at where we are now in terms of that blueprint being unfolded in material existence, manifesting itself in. So this brings us back to the central point of this video and the central point of this video series, and that is this is why they have to wipe out the mother, the human mother, the sacred feminine, the connection to the feminine principle. Because as most of us all know, that both men and women as individuals and as group have a particular kind of stupidity to them. Both men and women collectively and by themselves can do really stupid things. And men's stupidity is doing things like trying to build robots to make yourself immortal, building nuclear bombs that can destroy all life on the planet that you inhabit. That's a certain kind of stupidity that is specific to the male of our species. And we have this sort of sophisticated or unsophisticated checks and balances system, a natural checks and balances system, where the women in our species would say, hey, you guys, I don't think you should do that. Yeah, you guys got to put your toys away. That's enough of this. You've got taken it a little bit too far. And then you have clear-headed men who listen to these women and say, yeah, this is a little crazy, and they sort of wake up to the madness that's going on around them, and they fight off the crazy element, the demonic element that's entered into the male population to make them build these hell-creating demonic technologies that are going to wipe out the entire biological life on this planet. We have a planet that